Thank you, Barn Barn. Where in Florida are you? You know, I'm a gator. Well, it is officially 7:30 start time. Um, and tonight I thought we would go over some of the basics for Thanksgiving and turkey to start with, and then, as always, open it up for questions, discussion, debate. So I, uh, I want to start with just a little philosophy, if I may. I think Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday for a number of reasons. First of all, because there's food involved, and not only is food involved, but it's centered around food. I mean, we all have food at Fourth of July and Christmas and so on, but Thanksgiving is about food. It's the harvest festival, and it celebrates uh, breaking bread with friends. The history books tell us we dined with the Native Americans, the Indians, and but the cool thing about Thanksgiving is that the menu it varies from house to house, of course, but there is sort of a standardized menu to Thanksgiving. And, it starts with turkey. And yeah, some folks do lasagna and some folks do prime rib, but turkey is the standard for most of us. Then comes the stuffing, then comes the cranberries, sweet potatoes with or without marshmallows. And it's really kind of cool that across the country, regardless of your race, religion, political leanings, we tend to eat the same meal. And we tend to celebrate in a similar fashion. And that's really cool, I think. And it's special and it's unique. And I'm not aware of any other culture that does it that way. So I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving and big meal. We have a big gathering, about 30 at my brother in law's house. He does a turkey in the oven, and I do it on the smoker. And, well, you can guess which one goes first. Um, but it's a marvelous event. The day before Thanksgiving, my wife gets together with all her nieces. There's about 10 or 12 young boys and girls, not just the nieces, the boys participate. And they spend the whole day baking pie. And of course, that's a big part of the thrill of Thanksgiving is all the pies. Uh, they do some really great apple pie and of course pecan pie, which is my favorite. So special holiday. I thought I would just cover some of the basic core concepts of cooking turkey. Um, turkey provides the same problem that cooking any other whole animal provides. Um, when you cook a whole animal, you're forced into compromise because there are many different muscles. And some are really thick, some are really thin, some cook quickly, some take their sweet time. Some are white meat, some are dark meat. Um, in case of beef, some are fatty, some are lean. And they cook at different rates and they're ideally cooked at different temperatures sometimes. So I'm not a big fan of cooking whole animals. I don't cook whole chickens. I don't cook whole turkeys. Now, when you cook the Norman Rockwell turkey, you always run into this problem of the breasts drying out. And I've seen every way to work around this, where people put ice packs on the breasts for hours beforehand to chill the breast down so it'll take longer to cook. Um, I think the easiest thing to do is you break the bird down into 8 basic pieces. That's you got the 2 breasts and the 2 thighs. That's 4. And if you want to take the drumsticks off the thighs, that's 6. And if you want to take the wings off, that's 8. But 4 will do. I mean, the key is the problem with the Norman Rockwell bird is that you really almost always end up overcooking the breast meat. And the interior has a bubble of cold air in there, and unless you stuff it, and you should never stuff a turkey, and I'll talk about that in a second. The bubble of cold air prevents the interior from browning, and brown, of course, is flavor. So what a lot of people do is they do something called spatchcocking, which is a kind of naughty sounding word for butterflying, where you cut the bird down along the spine and you lay it out so it lays out flat. Now you can brown the interior, and that means more flavor. It also cooks faster when you butterfly, but you still have the basic issue of the breast, which is fairly thick, can be 4 inches thick or more, cooking at a different rate than the drumstick and thigh. And so I prefer to break it down and cook it in parts. And that way I can temp each part with my instant read thermometer. And when each part is optimum, off it comes. Another important thing I think to keep in mind is that modern turkeys tend to get very dry. And what you can do to help prevent that is brining it, and that is there's what we call dry brining, and I'm pretty sure I'm the one that invented the term. And wet brining. Wet brining is when you take the whole bird and you stick it in a beer cooler full of salty water, and then a lot of people throw in things like sugar and black pepper and garlic powder and onion powder and stuff. The problem with that is none of it can penetrate into the bird. The molecules are too large. Salt can penetrate, it can penetrate deep, and that's cool because salt is the magic rock, and salt alters the protein so that it holds on to more moisture. But the garlic and the sugar's 23 atoms. Salt is just 2, sodium and chloride. And when they get wet, which they do when they touch the surface of the bird, they get an electrical charge, ionized, and they can penetrate deep, and they can help retain moisture. And they amplify flavor without altering it. Garlic is going to alter the flavor. Black pepper is going to alter the flavor. And if you do it with a wet brine, you're dumping an awful lot of these spices in that liquid. Much better to do what we call dry brining. And dry brining is simply the day beforehand, you just sprinkle salt all over the bird. Not a lot. You don't have to do a lot. Half teaspoon of Morton coarse kosher salt per pound of meat. Or just eyeball it, what you would normally do if you were salting the meat for eating it. And that salt will penetrate. It'll even go through skin. But it takes a while. It moves slowly. It takes a while to get to the center and do its magic. And then you can add the other spices if you want at any time, because they're not getting in. They're sitting on the surface. And if you don't believe me, when you carve up your turkey, get a core sample from that breast. Take a little sample from inside that breast, and you won't taste any garlic or sugar or black pepper or anything. It just doesn't get in. It stays on the surface. So you can sprinkle that stuff on the surface. You can buy a commercial rub. I use a variation on my Simon and Garfunkel rub, which is on the website, and it's a herb-based rub. Simon and Garfunkel, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Of course, I dry brine the night before. So that's a really good approach and a really good technique. Um, Ron Peterson, you're asking what about spaking? I don't know what spaking is. We're talking about spatchcocking, or I know what baking is. I know what spanking is. Um, is that a typo, or is that something I should know about that you can teach me? Um, and Barn, you mentioned you were in Florida. I need to know where, because I'm an old Gator. I lived many years in Sarasota and Merritt Island, so I need to know if you're my neighbor. So we're gonna dry brine. We're gonna spatchcock or cut it into pieces. Now, you might get some blowback if you cut it into pieces because it doesn't look like a Norman Rockwell turkey. So in that case, maybe you do a spatchcock, because after you've done spatchcocking, laying it out flat, you can kind of fake it. You can kind of, for presentation purposes, reconstruct it somewhat. But the Norman Rockwell turkey is beautiful, but it's not terribly efficient. Now, I wanted to talk about stuffing. Um, I've been preaching "Don't stuff your bird" for years and years, and I think a lot of folks are catching up to that approach now. The stuffing, if it goes into a Norman Rockwell bird, you've now made a bowling ball. And poultry, you have to cook to a minimum of 160 degrees Fahrenheit. It will continue to rise in temperature. It's called carryover after you bring it out in. But USDA says 165. But if you take it off at 160, it'll come up to 165. And at 165, it's just a few degrees from cardboard. So if you stuff the bird, juices from the bird are going to get into that stuffing, which means you have to cook the stuffing up to a safe temperature. And there's real risk. There's real Salmonella and Campylobacter risk to poultry. And if you undercook it, we don't want to send grandma to the hospital on Thanksgiving. So if you stuff it, you do have to cook that center of the bowling ball to 160. Now, you got to think about this. That bowling ball, the heat hits the outside of the bowling ball, and it transfers slowly towards the center, warming as it goes. By the time it gets to the center, the outer layers have built up a lot of heat. They're way past 160. They're way overcooked. They're really on the verge of cardboard. So the faster you can get everything cooked evenly, the better, which is why spatchcocking works so well, because when you cut it open and lay it flat, it's roasting from all sides. And you get that interior cooked beautifully and brown. And now you've just got to cook your stuffing separately. Cook them on in a pan, and this is cool. On my website, AmazingRibs.com, you'll find a recipe for stuffing muffins. That's right. I bake my stuffing in muffin tins, and everybody gets a stuffing muffin. And the beauty of stuffing muffins is they're crispy all over, and everybody wants the crispy parts of the stuffing. And everybody gets the same, it's not like, oh, he took the corner piece and that was all, the only difference between that and your regular stuffing is there's usually a little more egg in my recipe because you need to hold it together. But it looks really cool sitting on the plate next to the bird, a little stuffing muffin. So I recommend you look into that. It's a lot of fun. It's a conversation starter. And everybody gets crispy muffin tops. Barn, you're in Titusville. I went to Merritt Island High School, and we had I was on both the football and the swimming team, and we had a pretty steady rivalry with Titusville High. In fact, my best friend in college Eddie Keller was a Titusville grad, and I swam against him. He was a breaststroker, and so was I. And we were the two best breaststrokers in the count in Brevard County, and it was a great rivalry. I'd never seen the school, never seen the school, just seen that yellow bus pull up to our school for swim meets, and I have fond memories of Eddie Keller from Titusville. Titusville is right there by the Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, the Space Coast, it's called, and so was Merritt Island. It was on the south side. So I lived there for many years. Loved it. Loved it down there. Did a lot of fishing on the Intercoastal Waterway. Built my own kayak, and I used to paddle it up and down the Intercoastal. And watching the launches, man, Saturn III, when it went up, you could read a newspaper. If it went up at night, you could read a newspaper by the light. Well, okay, good to see you. Welcome. Um, so you didn't tell me about your college, and which means you're probably from half-assed you, since I already told you I was a Gator, and you're just not going to tell me you went to half-assed you. Okay, so what else can I tell you about? Rubs. There's a lot of standard barbecue rubs out there, and most of them are designed for pork, and they're pretty similar. They got paprika and garlic and onion and sugar, and they work on poultry just fine. I think the French nailed poultry seasoning many, many centuries ago. And I lean on the poultry seasonings from France. There are a lot of recipes for poultry seasoning. You can just buy a poultry seasoning, but they're herb based, as is my Simon and Garfunkel: parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. It's a greenish. Got one here? No. Well, we're sold out of our poultry. But that's the direction I go. Is herbal. I think herbs go really well with turkey. Something else I do that's fun is my cranberry sauce is different. We often make Susan Stamberg's recipe, and I'm bringing her up because she was a great radio journalist on NPR. I listened to her many, many years, and she always gave her mother's cranberry recipe, which is cranberries mixed with horseradish, which is shocking sounding, and it comes out pink, but it's really quite delicious. My wife does one where she mixes in um, Asian pear and orange zest. I do one where I start with dried cranberries or craisins, and I soak them in port wine. Sometimes I'll turn the heat up under them a little bit but this inflates them. It rehydrates them, and then I throw some orange zest and other goodies in there. And this recipe is also on AmazingRibs.com. So it's really good, and of course the port wine gives it a nice kick. What else can we talk about? You can rotisserie a turkey. Again, now you've got everything all balled up, so you're not getting heat to the interior. But the rotisserie does a nice job of retaining moisture. You just have to be careful that you truss those legs up tight. Otherwise, they're going to flop around, and as they cook, they'll tear loose and they'll rip off the thigh. And God, I forgot the most important thing. This is really the coolest thing, and I really think it's something you need to try. I take a 9x13 standard baking pan. I got a stainless steel, or you can use a disposable aluminum pan. And when I take the bird out of the plastic bag, I trim up all of the excess skin and fat that's around both cavities. You got to reach in and pull out the paper bag that has all the gizzard and the liver and the neck, and all of that goes into the pan except the livers. Don't put the liver in there. I freeze the livers and I mix them up with my chicken livers, and when I've got enough, I make a pate out of them. The liver will alter. It's just an odd flavor, and it doesn't work well in the gravy, because we're going to make the gravy in a pan underneath the bird, and it's going to catch the drippings from the bird, the smoky drippings from the bird, and it just is phenomenal. So we're going to put the neck, and I clip the tips of the wings off because they're going to burn. You can prevent them from burning if you want to leave them on by wrapping them in foil, and then halfway through the cook, take the foil off. But I just snip off the tips of the wings into the pan, all the skin, all the excess fat, the neck, and then I chop up an apple. I'll throw in maybe half a bottle of wine or some chicken stock. I get some of the rub that I use on the bird and throw that in there. You can just go to town. I have some suggestions on my website about making this gravy, but I get the pan pretty full, and I will. Now, lately I have been breaking the bird down into drumstick and thigh combo, the two breasts, and the wings. And so it's 6 parts. And when I do, I will take the breast off the bone. So when I'm all done, I have boneless breast, and I have the carcass, and that's the skeleton of the bird. And I'll take that carcass and break it down. I've got some really good strong kitchen shears, and cut it up, and that goes in the pan too, because there's a lot of flavor in the bones and all the muscle that's still attached to them, and the connective tissues. And this sits under the bird and catches drippings, and if you're using a smoker, it'll catch the smoky drippings. And when the birds are going to come off at around 160 or so, okay? When the bird hits around 150, you pull that pan and you run it through a strainer, and you get rid of all the solids. I forgot. There's some carrots and celery in there too. And you strain them, and you throw away all the solids. They've given up their best for you. And that liquid, you taste it, and it's just dynamite. Basically, you've made a turkey, a turkey soup or a turkey stock. Now, it can be a little on the thin side. If it is, you just put it in a pan and on the stovetop and cook it down and make it a little more concentrated. I never add any thickener. I never add any flour or cornstarch to it. I don't think it needs it. I leave it thin, and when I drizzle it on the breasts, it penetrates the breast. It soaks in. That if you add flour or cornstarch, you're making like a paste, and it's very thick, and it just sits on top. It can be very flavorful, and if you want to do that, because an awful lot of people want that traditional gravy that's thick, go right ahead. But I don't. I just take it thin, and usually at the end of the dinner, there's still a couple of pints of this stuff left, and I drink it the next day with lunch. Just drink it. I mean, it's a soup. It's a stock. It's just delicious. So that's a really crucial part of my technique that I really think is worth testing. Okay, Barn went to TSU, which is now Trine. No degree in barbecue. I had to teach myself. Well, I hope you've got a hold of my books or poked around the website, because that'll get you up to speed. I hope most of you know that my new book, The Meathead Method, here came out this spring, and it's selling nicely. It's really a good book. People ask often what the difference between the two is. The first book laid the foundation by teaching all the science and all the chemistry and physics and that goes into cooking, and busts all those myths. Oh gosh, I just got into one of these huge debates on on X, on Twitter. People just cling to the mythology. Um, some guy was showing a picture of his brisket. It was beautiful, but he had left a big, thick fat cap. And when you serve it with that big, thick fat cap, everybody's going to cut the fat cap off. Nobody's going to eat a half inch of fat. Um, and when they cut it off, there goes all the rub and the seasoning. And they're still laboring under the misapprehension that the fat will melt and penetrate into the meat, and it can't. The meat is 75% water, the fat is oil. Oil and water don't mix. There is no way on this earth or any other planet that the fat can penetrate into a brisket. Now, the fat that's within the muscles, the marbling, is vital. That's flavor. But the fat cap cannot add any significant amount of flavor. So I recommend you either remove it all or leave maybe at the most a quarter of an inch, and that will reduce down to about an eighth inch. And I commented that this guy's brisket looked great, but he should have removed more of the fat. And that just started this brawl, which of course is what happens on social media. And it's just one of those myths that I break, that I bust myths in my first book extensively. And then there's some great recipes that employ the science. The second book, The Meathead Method, goes more into technique and the way I do things. Like we just talked about, my belief that you should break down an animal into different muscles. I mean, I love seeing a whole hog cooked, but the shoulders are best when cooked up to 203 degrees. But tenderloin and loin are best at 135 to 140. You're either going to ruin one or the other when you cook a whole hog. Okay, Barbara, I understand that some of your grocery store brands like Butterball, etc., are not that good, and you should go with Snake River Farms and private labels. It's my understanding that most turkey and chicken are, and pork for that matter, are factory farmed, and the methods are pretty similar. Now, if you can find one that is allowed to roam and eat bugs and stuff, it may be different. But I don't know that now. Butterball and some of the others inject their birds with a saline solution and phosphates and other things which are designed to make it stay moister. And if you don't like the foreign material in your turkey, then they should be avoided. But they do actually improve the flavor. So I don't think it's a huge deal. And how often do you eat turkey? I wish we ate more turkey. I wish we ate it all through the summer and winter. Most people cook it only once a year, so it's not going to kill you. I mean, Snake River Farms. I don't know if they make turkeys. But if you want to spend more money on a Snake River Farms or one of the other fancy labels, and if it makes you feel better, then by all means. I just go to the grocery store and buy whatever looks good and is on sale. And I have not ever noticed a significant difference between brands, at least in taste. Okay. I just a kind of a quick overview of my method for cooking turkey, and some of the sides, and I'm done with my monologue. Took 30 minutes here, but please hit me with your questions, comments, anything too. If you want to talk about grills, you want to talk about steak, I don't care. It doesn't have to be about Thanksgiving, but hit me with your best shot. All right. Well, while you guys are thinking, I'll tell you a little bit about something that I just recently did that was fun, and the recipes will start popping up on AmazingRibs.com. I heard about this really interesting concept called a vacation. If any of you are owners of your own small business, you should try to find out about this concept because I know it's foreign to you. People who have good jobs, 9 to 5 jobs, and get weekends off and health care and stuff, don't they know about this vacation thing. But people like me who own our own businesses and work 6, 7 days a week, 60 hours a week or so, it's a new concept. And my wife and I took one of these things a couple of weeks ago. We live in the Chicagoland area, and we drove north up into Wisconsin and around Lake Michigan. And we circumnavigated Lake Michigan and came back to our home. And it was just a lovely drive. And we had some hotel reservations, and we had a little list of some restaurants. But the food just didn't come pre-planned. But it did end up following a fascinating pattern. There are a lot of fish in the Great Lakes still. And most of them are darn tasty. And our first night out was a Friday, and we stumbled into a Wisconsin fish fry, where the cooks did a tremendous job of making this fish tender and flaky and not oily and greasy, and it was just delightful. Our second night was up in the Door County area, which is just east of Green Bay, and a piece of property known for its cherries and fruits and even grapes and wine now. And we stopped at a place called the Lighthouse Inn, which was built in the 60s, and it looked like it and it felt like it, but it was kept in really good condition. It's just it was felt dated, and it was kind of cool. It was a trip back in time, and they had a restaurant right on Lake Michigan, and we had some perch, and they pan fried it, breaded it with some cornmeal and flour, and pan fried it in butter. And oh my goodness, I've had perch. I've been a fisherman, and the first thing you catch as a kid when you're a fisherman is those little perch. And there's not much meat on them. I mean, the fillets are maybe 3 ounces at the most, but they were just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And then we headed up into the Upper Peninsula and ended over by Mackinac Island and Mackinac Peninsula, and had some Lake Huron lake trouts, and had that broiled almondine with almonds, and very lightly seasoned and just simply broiled. Again, caught today. Ate it for dinner. Wow, it was just delightful. I mean, I'm an old Florida boy. I was raised on the coast of Florida, both coasts, both the Gulf Coast for a while, and then the Atlantic coast. And I raised on seafood with a fishing rod in my hand, and I was just shocked and delighted how uniformly good these lake fish were. And had a few other meals. Oh, we stopped at Carlson's Smokehouse in I'm trying to remember the name of the town. I can't. It's on the Traverse Peninsula, on Lake Michigan. I mean, and then the smokehouse was like right on the lake, and he smoked everything. I mean, and he makes, among other things, a really interesting fish sausage. Which is a blend of lake trout and I forget the other fish, and they season it and stuff it into casings, and it was really delightful. Smoked, and we had several of his fish. Sat on a picnic table right there behind his smokehouse. Some of the best smoked fish I've ever had. And I've written about the smoked fish technique at Carlson's I don't know if it's been published yet. I sent it to our editor a week or so ago, and it may be up on. So if you want to learn some of the things that I have, my techniques for smoking on the website, and also his. So just go to amazingribs.com and look for smoked fish or smoking fish. I even have a fish pate recipe my recipe, but it's that was something he did also that was delicious. And also along the way we stumbled into a fish boil. Now this is something I've heard about for years, that is popular in the northern Wisconsin and Michigan, and it just has never interested me, boiling fish. I just didn't think that would be, really, that the fish would fall apart. It wouldn't be tasty and whatever. Well, this guy had this big cast iron cauldron, and he had 8 gallons of water in there and a pound of salt. And he began by throwing in some corn, not corn, carrots. Peeled the carrots, chopped them up in a maybe 3-4 inch length, threw them in. 10 minutes later, some little baby potatoes, a little bigger than a golf ball, skin on. 10 minutes later, some onions, a little bigger than a golf ball. Of course, they were skinned and they went in. And then 10 minutes later, the fish went in. Now, all the vegetables were very cold. They were not frozen, but they came out of the fridge and they went in cold. The fish was frozen. It was cod, and it was frozen, and it went in frozen. And it took only about 10 or 15 minutes for it to cook. And then I got to tell you, it was just delicious. That pound of salt to 8 gallons of water, that ratio was exactly the right amount to season all the vegetables and the fish to perfection. The fish was not mushy. It was not falling apart. It had nice texture. And it was all served with clarified butter. And so I've reverse engineered that recipe to something that you can do at home in a smaller quantity. And I sent that to the editor. I don't think it's appeared yet on the website, but it will shortly. You might check and see if there's a recipe for fish boil there yet now. And if there's not, come back in a couple of weeks. It should be there. And there's also, I think there's a recipe on the site for making clarified butter, which is really easy. So that was my great adventure. I'm still looking for somebody with some tough questions, good questions. Anything exciting? Anybody got a question you want to ask me about anything related to cooking? My books? Oh, I should tell you about my final stop on the trip was in Rochester, Michigan. Rochester is north of Detroit, a couple hours, maybe an hour and a half. And it's the home of Leader Dogs for the Blind. And you may have heard me talk about this before, but as a hobby, my wife and I train puppies for Leader Dogs for the Blind. And we picked up a black lab, 8 weeks old, and brought her home. And can't see here, but my hand is covered in bites, sharp little teeth. But she has she's been with us a month now, and they breed their own animals, and they're really whip smart. She is just an amazing animal. She learned her name within a day or two. She's house trained within a week. At night, she goes up the stairs and walks into her crate on her own. She has some problems. She's a real troublemaker, and she does things that she knows she shouldn't do just for attention. But gorgeous animal, a lot of fun. Cool J, talk about how to minimize freezer burn. Yeah. Freezer burn is a chemical reaction that happens, and it changes the color and the texture of food, and pretty much it's not harmful. There's no bacteria involved. It just makes it feel and taste funny. Um, I have often talked about, well, for example, turkey. You can actually buy fresh turkeys. Here near my house, there's a guy who has live birds on the premise. You walk in and point at one and say, I want that one. And he takes it out and puts it upside down into like a big funnel and slices its throat, drains the blood and plucks all the feathers, and you go home with a fresh turkey. Um, which is not a good idea, by the way. I learned the hard way because they go through rigor mortis. And so you need to let them rest for a day or two before you cook them. But you can buy fresh turkeys from the store, and there's a high likelihood that the word fresh is misleading. USDA allows them to label the bird fresh if it has not gone below 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, wait a minute. 32 is freezing temperature of water. So 26 is well below water freezing temperature, isn't it? Yeah. But the theory is it doesn't freeze because of the fluids that are in the muscles and everything, and that prevent freezing. Well, that's bull hockey, because at 26 degrees, you've got a bowling ball. But a lot of other so-called fresh birds, they are grown, let's say, in Iowa, and they're slaughtered and picked and packed and shipped to your grocery store in New Jersey, Ohio, Florida, wherever you are. That bird is not really fresh anymore. The methods they have for flash freezing nowadays, and this holds really true for fish. If you just take a turkey leg, a fresh turkey leg, and throw it in your kitchen freezer, which is probably down around 30 degrees or so, maybe lower. When it freezes, it tends to make crystals of ice. And those ice crystals break through the muscle fibers. And when you open the bag, there's often juice from the bird in the bag. And these new methods of flash freezing, where it's really cold, the ice crystals are much smaller. And so there's less liquid loss. And the meat tastes much fresher. And this is especially true for seafood. Flash frozen, I get a shipment of fresh, flash frozen Alaskan seafood, fish, every month. I get it shipped to me by a company called Sitka Seafood. They're out of Sitka, Alaska, and all line caught fish, flash frozen. And the stuff is, you would swear it was just caught this morning. So flash freezing turkey is I think preferable to the so-called fresh turkey. The problem of freezer burn is a combination of things. It's a combination of oxygen and temperature and time is a real factor. You can throw some turkey into the freezer and you're not going to have freezer burn for 4 or 6 weeks. But the longer it's there, the surface tends to dry out. And that's when you get freezer burn. And as I say, it's okay to eat, but it's not the most flavorful, tender, appetizing texture. But it's not bad to eat. So you try to eat stuff, within a month of freezing is usually good. But if you're buying half a cow, you should look into a vacuum sealer. Now, they make small vacuum sealers that are about the size of a laptop computer, and it pulls all the oxygen out, and oxygen is part of the equation that causes freezer burn. And that will help preserve and prolong anything. It's a really great tool for people who buy in bulk and freeze foods. And even if you don't buy in bulk, if you just, get food that you want to freeze. And you've noticed, I'm sure, that when you buy frozen foods, often they have been vacuum sealed. The plastic that they're in is like in very close contact with the food. If you don't want to occupy kitchen counter space with a device that is a vacuum sealer, it looks, well, as I say, it's not a little bigger than a laptop computer. You put the food in a plastic bag and you lay it into the top into the vacuum sealer, close the lid, and it sucks all the oxygen out, and then it's got a heating element that seals it. You can buy plastic bags, I buy them on Amazon, that have like a little hole on one side with a one-way valve. And it's just a little plastic valve. They're not expensive, but they're not cheap. I buy them in bulk, and I have a little vacuum device. It looks like a hand grenade. It's not big. It holds in your hand and charges with a USB cable. And you just put this thing, it's got a little suction cup on one end, over that little valve, and it sucks the air out. And you have exactly the same effect as if you had the big countertop vacuum sealer, and it works pretty well. So that's a good way to do it if you don't want to clutter up the kitchen counter, and if you don't do a lot of freezing. RS Catranda, are more expensive turkeys worth it? Does it make a difference? We touched upon that a little bit ago. Must have been before you got here. I just buy commercial turkey. There are some heritage breeds that are interesting, have more dark meat, more flavor. I think the key to a good grocery store turkey is that it is flash frozen and that hasn't been thawed. But I have had some of these heritage breeds, and I don't remember their names. The standard is your Rhode Island Red, I think, is what most of us buy in the store. But some of these heritage breeds are pretty nice. They are very expensive. If it's just a good old-fashioned Rhode Island Red, I don't think there's a big difference between a turkey raised by a 4-H student who feeds it by hand and nurtures it and sings to it every night before bed, and a mass-produced turkey. Bob Allman is saying, thank you, Bob. Best tip he ever got from me was going to dry brining. Game changer. Yeah, dry brining it's so much easier than wet brining, and it works just as well. And it's a very good technique, not just for turkey, but for chicken, but for pork. Salt is the magic rock. And I know many of us are on diets that require us to keep the salt under control, keep it down. I'm not asking you to use a lot of salt. One teaspoon per pound of meat, and I use Morton's kosher salt in all my recipes, not because they pay me. I've never met anyone from Morton. It's just because it's in every grocery store, and it has very few additives, and the grains are nice and easy to pick up. And that's my standard salt for everything. And it's not the same as Morton's table salt, which is smaller grains, which means it's more concentrated and it's got more salinity. So if you read and cook one of my recipes that says 1 teaspoon of Morton's coarse kosher salt, don't substitute table salt. And if you do, on my website, there's a calculator that will tell you if I call for kosher salt and you're using table salt, here's how much to use. And really, I think recipe writers, book authors, magazine writers, television cooks, if they don't tell you what salt is in that recipe, and we're going to add a tablespoon of salt. What salt? Because the size of the grain, and let's see if I can just find this illustration in my book. The size of the grain determines how much sodium and salinity is in that. Stick with me. I'm sorry to waste your time here, but I have a really good illustration that demonstrates it in the new book. And I'm flipping through the pages now. Stick with me. There. Oh boy, it's small, isn't it? Well, let's see if we can share it. If not, I'm coming. Get this microphone out of the way. All right. Well, you can see there's a picture of four waste baskets. Okay, and they got different sized balls in them. And so now you need to visualize. The first one actually doesn't have balls; those are dice. The second one's got tennis balls. Third one's got books, and the fourth one's got basketballs, and they represent table salt, pickling salt, kosher Morton kosher salt, Diamond Crystal kosher salt, and Malden sea salt, and they're all different. And Diamond Crystal salt, kosher salt, is less salinity than Morton's. So you need to pay attention to what kind of salt. And by the way, if you've been to my sessions before, you've heard this, but all salt is sea salt. All salt comes from the sea. Period. Now, there are different ways of harvesting it and refining it, but the salt that they mine in Watkins Glen, New York, and the Syracuse, which are large underground veins of salt, are run through processes, and that's where your table salt and most of your kosher salts come from. But some salt is made just by letting the water evaporate in a salt pond. These are actually ponds where the ocean water is let in, and then they dam it off, and they just let it evaporate naturally. Others, they bring the water into big pans, and they heat the pans and evaporate it with heat. And they make different size crystals. And the stuff that's evaporated naturally will be sodium chloride plus whatever other minerals might be floating around in the ocean that day, which might also include fish poop. So buying sea salt, the one thing it will guarantee you is that it's more expensive. So Bob was talking about dry brining, and that's simply just the technique of sprinkling salt onto your food, whether it's meats or vegetables. If you sprinkle it on, when it gets wet, it gets ionized, electrically charged, it moves to the center, and it alters the protein structures, help it hold on to moisture, and amplifies flavor without changing it. That's a really nice combination of effects. And so I'm a big fan of salting and dry brining, and I'm 99% certain I'm the one that coined the term dry brining. I didn't invent the concept. Others had been doing it, but I gave it a name. So, how we doing? We got any more questions? It's coming up on 8:25, and I'm a little tired. I'm getting to be old, and The puppy wakes me up at 5 every morning, and it's still dark out, and I gotta take her for a walk. And but she's letting me sleep the night. She's just amazing. And I'd bring her in and show her off, but she's snoozing in the next room. And rule number one when you're training a puppy is don't wake them up. We've done 8 of these leader dogs for the blind puppies. And it's a real joy. I mean, it's a lot of fun getting a puppy, and they're just entertaining as can be. And puppy breath itself is worthwhile. But we have to give them up after a year. We send them back to the leader dog school where they get advanced training from professional trainers. And we got just a couple of minutes. I don't see any new questions coming up, but I'll share just a fascinating thought about them. Right now, Starla is her name. She's with me, and my wife and I, mostly me, I train them. We train her and teach her her manners. I call them the 10 Commandments: sit down, stay, heel, come, and so on. And after a year, they're pretty well trained. They're pretty good dogs. They know an awful lot. And then we have to send them back to the grad school for finish training by the professionals who teach them how to cross streets without getting their blind owner killed, and how to guide them around overhanging branches, and watching out for cracks and holes in the sidewalk and all that sort of thing. And it's pretty cool that they learn all of that. And once they've done all that and they've got all that down pat, the blind people fly in to Rochester, and they have a dormitory there, and it's like a hotel room. And they come in and they check into their little room, and there's a restaurant. They eat in the restaurant. And after a day or so where they get training, the dog is brought in. They're matched with a dog, and that often has to do with the height of the person and the height of the dog and strength and temperament and so on. The dog is brought into the room with the blind person sitting on a chair or the edge of their bed, and the leash is given to the blind person. Well, up until now, training has been a game. It's been fun. They get rewards, they get treats, they get patted on the head, they get love. And it's different from now on. It's work. And somehow, and this is the miracle, somehow the dog figures out, if I fuck up, we both die. I can't fuck up. I've got to go to work every morning. It's not a game anymore. And this person depends on me. And it's not like I depend on the person, which is when they were with me. And that's mind-blowing. I don't know how that happens mentally. So it's very cool. And we're looking forward to seeing how Starla trains. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight, and with Thanksgiving just around the corner, I won't be seeing you before Thanksgiving. I'll be back for my last Wednesday of the month next month, which will be after Thanksgiving. So I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and we started off with just a little piece of philosophy. I'll repeat briefly that I think Thanksgiving is a really special holiday because it's the one holiday that is centered around food, that is about food. We eat together at almost all holidays, but this one is about food. And not only is it about food, but most of us eat the same meal all across America. I mean, all right, some of you may have lasagna or prime rib instead of turkey, but most of us are having turkey. Most of us are having stuffing and cranberries and sweet potatoes, and regardless of a race, religion, political beliefs. And I just think that's the coolest thing on earth. So I look forward to having a meal with you on Thanksgiving. Even if we're not physically together, we'll be spiritually together. And I wish you well, and I wish America well. Thanks, and good night, everybody, and have a happy Thanksgiving.